I saw what you've been posting. Hitler was right. I didn't teach you that. You hide behind your screen, spewing all this hatred and ugliness. You got something you want to say? Get out of the truck and say it to their faces.
Very powerful. That was a PSA you just watched from the Foundation to Combat Anti-Semitism. It's part of their initiative, Stand Up to Jewish Hate, to empower others to defend the Jewish community. The year 2022, just last year, was the worst year for anti-Semitic incidents across this country. This is according to recent data released by the Anti-Defamation League. Positive messaging, like we just saw in that PSA, is an approach to stop acts of anti-Semitism. Mark Toubin, Regional Director with the Anti-Defamation League Southwest region, is here to talk about how we can work toward a more inclusive world. Mark, thank you so much for coming in. You know, when I initially reached out to you guys when I saw this a few weeks ago. I was getting ready for one of our shows, one of our 8 a.m. shows in the makeup room. And this popped up and it stopped me. It was that commercial and it stopped me in my tracks. Extremely powerful.
Absolutely. And first of all, thank you for having me on. It's great to be here this morning. And thank you for talking about this issue. Because that is a critical element. And that's, I think, one of the purposes behind that commercial, which is to raise awareness. And also to illustrate that one person can make a difference. This is what we talk about a lot. I mean, the resolution of anti-Semitism and the dramatic rise we've been seeing, as well as the dramatic rise in hate overall, the overall solution is complex. It has to do with online activity and social media. It has to do with responding to our societal ills. It has to do with the fact that, you know, there's a demigod out there politically who is essentially giving people the green light to express their hate. And all these are coming together in a way which we have unfortunately seen through history. But on the other hand, the one response and solution is also very simple. And that is every person who sees and recognizes hate and an injustice and anti-Semitism responds to that. We can all do that every single day. And if we do that, we have a much better chance of overcoming the situation which we are currently facing.
The complexity of it becomes that much less insignificant to what it is if we don't get involved.
That's right.
If we don't act.
Absolutely.
You know, I was going through a recent report that we just published here at KPRC, and it was heartbreaking to learn of this. Many in Houston have felt they've experienced anti-Semitism firsthand, but when you break these numbers down, a total of 46 of 73 incidents reported to the ADL just last year targeted the Jewish community here in Houston. This is happening here in Houston. This is an 87% increase over 2021. I know you said earlier that this is a very complex issue, but what is fueling that surge from 2021 to 2022?
Yeah, first of all, 2022 unfortunately set a record number nationally with a 36% rise over the 50, over the 50 states. And in Texas, we saw an even higher rise. I think over 200 total in Texas. And as you mentioned, the numbers here in the Houston area. Part of it depends upon what different parts of the country. So we have been fortunate here in Houston that we didn't see any assaults. Right. But, you know, in New York and in California, they did, and that made up the bulk of that. Colleyville, which was a hostage taking outside of Dallas, was part of that statistic. But we are seeing this rise and this record number, which superseded the record number of 2021. And by the way, we also issue a report on white supremacist propaganda.
Yeah.
And
Which
Texas,
goes hand in hand with
exactly. Texas led the nation with over 500 incidents of the distribution of these really terrible anti-Semitic flyers, sometimes racist as well, that target neighborhoods all around the state and particularly around the Houston area. A number of the incidents that we have are reflective of the white supremacist propaganda. But there are others. I mean, we are seeing reports of sort of anti-Semitic bullying in schools, which is really problematic because the implications of that to the individual and to the school and to that environment are long-term. And that's why I think that commercial points when, if a parent recognizes that their child is being influenced either by others or by what they're reading online, that you cannot be passive.
Yeah.
You have to respond.
Do you hear from parents in situations like that?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And sometimes the parents and the student are willing to discuss, and sometimes they just want to let us know, but they don't want anything done because they feel that it'll kind of, make things worse. And that's unfortunate.
It is not the
but
approach
we
that,
respect certainly everybody's decision.
Listen, why don't we tell our folks listening and watching right now a little bit about what the ADL does. It's not just combating these types of incidents, but it's also a lot more work that continues in the community.
Yes, it is a lot more.
It's a full-time job.
Particularly, yes, and then some. So the ADL is over 100 years old, 110 to be exact. And we have the same mission that we've had throughout that time period, which is to combat the defamation of the Jewish people and to secure justice and fair treatment for all. Because we recognize that, that just because someone is targeting a particular group, whether it's Jews or blacks or Latinos, it doesn't stop there.
Right, it continues.
And so we all have to be part of combating it, and we have to support each other. Anti-Semitism is referred to as, the world's oldest form of hate, and these stereotypes and tropes, which go back centuries, if not millennia, have permeated history. And the thing about anti-Semitism, which is different than other forms of hate, is it is at its essence a conspiracy theory. It is a conspiracy based on these tropes that Jews who are all powerful or controlling are puppeteering and acting in ways which are hurting society. But what it really is, it is an explanation for people whose lives are not what they would like. And so to explain that difference, they rely on anti-Semitism, which is being permeated by hate groups and unfortunately by even elected officials.
Yeah, and passed along to our youth, which is really unfortunate.
That's right.
For people wanting to or needing to reach out for help or to report any sort of incident, how can they go about doing so?
We have a very robust website, which I urge people to take a look at. On that website is a portal where you can report any form of hate, discrimination, or bias. It's adl.org/report incident. And we will receive it. It's confidential. And we will respond and help as we can. One of the things we urge, or certainly, is that people self-help.
Yeah.
That we want to give people the courage in order to address the wrongs. And if that doesn't work, then we figure out how we can help.
And we talk about this so often on this show during these conversations. It starts with a conversation. It starts with a conversation and knowing that you're not alone, that there is help and there are ways to rise above, especially incidents like this.
Absolutely.
That website is on the bottom of your screen. That's adl.org. /report-incident. Mark, thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you very much.
We do appreciate it.